How are we doing, everybody? Welcome to One Big Question with Lynnette and Father Pete. We are here today with my co-host and today's guest, Father Pete, and we're covering a topic that it's on everybody's mind: the new restrictions, the new guidelines, and just life with COVID in general. It seems that a lot of students are getting antsy. There's obviously been a lot of things in the news and just behavior on campus. So we just want to talk about the one big question: why should we care? Father Pete, thank you for being here. Thank you for being my co-host. How are we doing today?
Lynnette, it's so good to see you. And thanks for queuing up this really important one big question. You know, for me to sit here and say that I have all the answers about why we should care would be an over-exaggeration. However, I want to start with my own personal experience of life in COVID times. You know, it's been almost a year. And if folks are anything like me, that year has presented its own challenges over the arc of all the different changes and questions that have arisen. And in my own conversations with others and my own dealings with myself, realities like anxiety, fear, depression at times, those are all very real. And so it's day to day sometimes, and that gets old. But the challenge that I think that we now face is that now that we're a year in, what are we going to do? And I think invariably throughout time, there's a few temptations that arise. One that oftentimes gets seen is we break up into camps and we begin to think about this side or that side. So let's name it: the administrators and the students. The administrators aren't transparent enough. The students aren't following the rules well enough. And the interesting thing about those dynamics is that we can get to a point where it actually helps us to kind of pin our frustrations on another group. And in the short run, it feels good. It feels like I'm justified. But in the long run, there's a reason that if you really want to break down society, you divide and conquer. You end up tearing groups apart and you end up looking at one another in a divisive way and not in a unitive way. And so the reason that I think we should care is because the unity that we have as Notre Dame in its most ideal form is what we want to strive towards. And in fact, even more importantly, when we're tired. United we stand. That's a theme that I want to make, that ultimately it's being here together, but it's also working through what we face together is why we should care. What do we need to avoid? Ultimately looking at the other, pointing fingers, but instead seeking to understand and perhaps even walk a mile in another person's shoe. And I'm talking to all audiences here. Because the fact is that there's no one here who is expert in COVID. There may be some who understand the medical reality of COVID, but students, staff, and faculty are all going through this for the first time together. So to the degree that we can, to provide one another a little bit of space as we are trying to figure these things out, and to be able to safely and vulnerably express what we're most concerned about and how we might be able to assist one another, I think is the reason that we should continue to care, because there's a whole heck of a lot at stake.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, especially as a student, I think the thing that's the most frustrating, and maybe you can speak to this too, is that I feel as though there's a big portion of students that say, well, this is our college years and we only get one shot at this. You don't get to, we don't get to have a next year where it's going to be the same. And especially for seniors in a few months, we don't get a shot at college anymore. And so I think that that's probably one of the biggest problems people are having is they want to follow the rules. They want to be a good part of the community. And I don't think anyone is saying that people who aren't following the rules are these huge demons. But The thing is, we only get this one shot at college. So what would you say to kids that are kind of feeling like, I want to follow the rules, but I also need to make the most of these 4 years?
Man, that's such a great question, Lynnette. And that is one that's at the heart of so much of what's happening here. So I want to address that first. I am so sorry that this has happened to us at this time. There is not a single person on this campus, on the administrative side, on the staff side, that would hope for the circumstance in which we're in. And so to name the grief that any given student is dealing with on this matter is real, and it's not to be dismissed. There comes a moment, however, that we have to begin to think to ourselves, what are we going to do with the reality that we face? And I think invariably, this is one of the great lessons of life, that at some point we need to accept the situation that we find ourselves in, and it's no one's fault. But what I oftentimes worry about is that without acceptance, we can begin to move into a space that in fact can be dangerous for not only oneself, but for others. So let me play this out. If we act as if COVID is not a thing, go back to 2019 norms, then what does that accomplish in the end? We see case count spike, we see higher rates of quarantine and isolation, which also drives sense of isolation and anxiety. So while even though we are trying to name something that's very real and challenging in our lives, the answer is not to disregard what we know to be the facts. I think it's actually a practice of recognizing and accepting where we find ourselves now that's most critical here. Because in my mind, that's where creativity flourishes. If we were able to actually say to ourselves, okay, this is the norm. No one wants this. No one went looking for this. But yet here we are. Okay, how do we solve this? And in my mind, there are some really great opportunities coming. March is almost right around the corner. Thank the good Lord, we are almost through February.
We need spring. We need it so bad.
So let's name some of the wins here. We are almost to better weather. There are going to be opportunities to come together. Hope, in my mind, is rising. And not only that, Lynnette, but I think we've proven as a community that we can do this, and we've done it in the fall. Think about the beautiful way, and this is very different. Our community came together for the memorial mass of Valeria and Olivia. Some people who knew them well, others who didn't, but came because they valued this community, the unity of this community. You think about the great joy that the student body expressed at the Clemson game. And I'm talking about all the sacrifices that students had to make in order to be there at that moment. These are the types of things that we're capable of, but it's only because we deal with the facts as they are. So one, the grief is real, and my heart breaks, and I am empathetic, and I will listen for as long as anyone would need, because I believe it to be true. There's genuine mourning that's occurring here. But if we don't accept where we find ourselves and try to creatively work through this to continue to hold true to the values that we believe so fundamental of community, of friendship, of learning, then we're missing an opportunity in my mind to not only grow in this moment, but also to practice something that will be an invaluable skill into the future.
Absolutely. And I think as a student, it will make everybody feel better to hear that the administration understands our loss and our grieving for a lot of our college experience. And I mean, I know myself, I've struggled with the guidelines and the rules and just not getting to have the senior year that I necessarily want. But like I said, it makes it better to know that people like you are there and thinking about us. And like you said, spring is coming, and there will be more opportunity for outdoor activity and larger ways to see your friends and have fun. But do you have any closing words for this episode? I mean, we're not going to solve this in a day. COVID isn't going to be solved by this podcast at all. But I think that it's good for students to be able to hear a beacon of hope like you, Father Pete, and just be allowed to feel these feelings of grief. So do you have anything to close out this week's show?
Lynnette, I do. I have two thoughts. And thanks for what you said, most importantly, because I do think that you're naming what's on the hearts and minds of so many. And courageously, you've been able to put yourself out there as a person who's able to name in a meaningful way what so many people are feeling. So thanks to you for what you're doing here on this podcast and on this show. This week, we celebrate and remember Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. So we named the week, of course, Walk the Walk Week. And one of the lines that he used that has really struck me, and I want to make sure that I get it accurately. He says, life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are you doing to help others? What are you doing to help others? What I love about that question is that it roots us fundamentally in one another, not in my own needs, but in fact, in the other. And so if I could offer a word of guidance, perhaps it's this question: what are we doing to help others? It's something that might just get us up out of bed in the morning, and it might be something that we can willingly begin to sacrifice on its behalf. And let me tease that out a bit. All of us know people who are currently in quarantine and isolation. And anyone who's been in quarantine and isolation, as I have, know the challenges that faces. We also know of the isolation and loneliness that can sometimes occur even when you're not in quarantine and isolation. What does it mean to know that some of your friends are out and you're not? What does it mean to think about a future that is not as certain as we would otherwise prefer? But what can keep us focused and grounded in the moment is, what is it that I'm doing to help another? What is it that I'm doing to share my gifts, my abilities with another person that just might make a bit of a difference? And so it sets me up to this. And I want us to think about non-COVID terms, because we're going to get there. Vaccines are on the way, better weather's on the way. There's a lot of reason for hope here. But in this precise moment, a moment that none of us went looking for, but a moment that we are squarely in, I want us to think about times in which we are able to come close to one another. And in fact, we're able to sing with one another. Because in that precise moment, I want us to imagine the alma mater. We all come together, we extend our hands, we lock arms, and we sway back and forth and sing a hymn that is not only an honorary praise and prayer to Mary, but also a reflection of our community. And one of the lines that we belt out most famously is, "Love thee, Notre Dame." Love thee, Notre Dame. What does that mean? That means that we are going to give our heart, our being, and our mind to this community, that we're going to love each person, that we're going to give of ourselves, that we're going to assume goodwill. So if I could offer anything in closing, it's Dr. King's question: what am I doing to help others? And the final insight is, love thee, Notre Dame. How do we go about building this community through the love that we have for other people and the gifts and talents that we have to share? So it truly is an honor to be a part and to be featured on this show today. And Lynnette, you did an awesome job asking some really great questions.
Thank you, Father Pete. And I mean, I just got chills. Love thee, Notre Dame. Absolutely. Everybody, make sure you continue to stay safe, stay healthy, and follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Notre Dame. Submit your questions. We want to talk about what you want to talk about. This has been One Big Question. Have a great week.